On an individual level in litigation, this is a relatively minor issue because we're talking about mere minutes where someone is off the clock. But the off-the-clock litigation has become so prominent in the class action context that it's actually become a huge issue for operators to be aware of and concerned about. The plaintiffs that I've met, the employees, believe that they're on the clock anytime they set foot on the premises. But most time operators don't have people changing into uniforms at the restaurant, and therefore we avoid what's called donning and doffing issues, where employees would have to be paid for the period of time where they're changing into a uniform. Most of the off-the-clock issues come up at the end of a shift, when someone is reconciling a tip pool, the tips they individually receive that day, and or going ahead and finishing up side work, or going ahead and reconciling bills that they ended up having. There is no one set of rules where every instance someone is going to be determined to be on the clock or working off the clock and entitled to back pay. But the main issue we're looking at here is whether someone is subject to the control of the employer. If they're taking their individual tips, for instance, and voluntarily tipping out a busser, tipping out a host or a hostess, that to me doesn't sound like a situation where they're subject to the control. They're doing it voluntarily. When you have a mandatory tip pool, the issue of off the clock becomes more pronounced because the employee has to do something. That could give rise to an off the clock claim where someone successfully says, I'm subject to the control of the employer still when I'm reconciling my tips and figuring out how much I have to put into the tip pool or how much I'm entitled to go ahead and take home with me at the end of that shift. And the danger that I'm concerned about is that many people go ahead and have people clock out before they reconcile their tips for a mandatory tip pool. I think that's where the exposure is for people that we need to be more cognizant about and more careful of. If you're going to have a situation where someone clocks out and still does something, it should be voluntary that they remain around the property. If it's not voluntary, they should still be clocked in, so you avoid someone later on using that as an opportunity to start a case of their own, start a labor commissioner claim, or join a successful class action for an off-the-clock claim.